Hi, I'm Blake Lively, and I'm going to be taking the BuzzFeed quiz, which iconic Blake Lively character?
In the aftermath of Taylor Swift's bold confirmation that Ryan Reynolds had indeed tried and failed to hijack her spotlight, the Hollywood landscape entered a new era of scandalous clarity, where whispers became shouts and every hidden maneuver was dragged into the spotlight that Ryan so desperately wanted but could never claim, because while he had built his career on witty sarcasm, on-screen charm, and his carefully crafted partnership with Blake Lively, the sheer gravity of Taylor's presence in pop culture was so immense that even his most calculated attempts at outshining her seemed laughable. And when Taylor finally broke her silence, not with anger but with her signature blend of humor, sharp wit, and unapologetic confidence, the narrative instantly shifted, because no longer was it a rumor whispered in the shadows of gossip columns, no longer was it a theory debated in online fan forums. It was now a cold, undeniable truth, and the entertainment world had to reckon with the fact that Ryan Reynolds, one of Hollywood's biggest comedic powerhouses, had stumbled into one of the worst traps of all, underestimating Taylor Swift, a woman who had not only survived but thrived under the harshest media scrutiny, outwitted some of the most powerful men in the industry, and transformed every attempt to silence or sideline her into fuel for her unparalleled legacy. And now, with her statement echoing across headlines, interviews, and viral clips, the damage to Ryan's image was colossal, because he wasn't just the funny guy anymore. He was the actor who tried to steal from a cultural juggernaut and failed so spectacularly that the fallout became a case study in Hollywood hubris, and fans, critics, and even industry insiders could not resist dissecting every detail, every hidden motive, every subtle interaction between the Swifts and the Reynolds-Lively household, turning it into a saga of betrayal, loyalty, and the intoxicating allure of fame, where Ryan's miscalculation became the centerpiece of discussion, because while Blake Lively had often basked in Taylor's glow, cementing herself as part of the Swiftian inner circle, Ryan apparently grew resentful, realizing that no matter how many blockbuster franchises he headlined or how many viral Deadpool jokes he cracked, the gravitational pull of Taylor's star was something he could never replicate, and so he hatched his attempts at spotlight theft, not with overt malice but with sly humor, carefully timed comments, and red carpet antics meant to redirect attention. Yet ironically, those very attempts became his undoing, because fans noticed, journalists documented, and Taylor, with the patience of someone who had weathered storms far bigger, chose the perfect moment to speak, delivering her confirmation not as an emotional rant but as a calm, almost playful acknowledgement that yes, Ryan had tried, and no, it hadn't worked. And in that moment she didn't just defend herself, she elevated the entire narrative into a Swiftian masterclass in public image, because suddenly Ryan was the desperate one, the man fumbling for relevance in a room dominated by her presence, and the industry, which once revered his media savvy, began whispering about his ego, his need to be the center of attention, his inability to let his wife's friendship with Taylor shine without inserting himself, and those whispers soon became amplified through late-night monologues, TikTok breakdowns, and fan-made compilations that mocked Ryan's every failed attempt, painting him as the punchline rather than the comedian. And while Blake tried to maintain her composure, smiling through paparazzi encounters and posting carefully curated social media updates, the cracks in her polished image became visible too, because how could she distance herself from her husband's blunder without betraying him? And how could she remain close to Taylor without acknowledging the mess that had unfolded? And so, the once picture-perfect couple found themselves caught in a tug-of-war between Hollywood loyalty and personal pride, their PR teams scrambling to repair the damage, their allies quietly choosing sides, and the entire spectacle playing out like a soap opera too juicy for even the most cynical fans to ignore, because beyond the glitz and glamour, beyond the designer gowns and multi-million-dollar contracts, this was the raw human drama of ego, betrayal, and the dangerous game of trying to control. A narrative in an age where truth always finds its way out, and Ryan Reynolds, for all his cleverness, learned the hardest lesson of all. You cannot steal the spotlight from someone who was born to command it, and Taylor Swift, by confirming what everyone suspected, not only ended the speculation but also reminded the world why she is untouchable in the realm of cultural dominance, because while others play for laughs or fleeting attention, she plays for legacy, and in that game she never loses, leaving Ryan to nurse his wounded pride, Blake to reassess her alliances, and Hollywood to marvel at the spectacle of a man who thought he could rewrite the script only to discover that in the Taylor Swift universe, She is the sole author, the editor, and the headline. And with every passing day, the echoes of this scandal only grow louder, not as a moment of fleeting gossip but as a cautionary tale for every star who dares to forget that the spotlight is not something you can steal. It is something you earn, and once Taylor Swift shines it, no one else can dim it, no matter how hard they try. And just when people thought the drama had peaked, Taylor Swift's quiet but deadly confirmation that Ryan Reynolds' attempt at stealing the spotlight had backfired didn't fade. It detonated, dragging every corner of Hollywood into the mess. Because now this wasn't just about a witty actor fumbling against a global superstar, it was about pride, loyalty, and the unforgiving court of public opinion. And suddenly Ryan was no longer just the guy with the jokes. He was being painted as the guy who couldn't handle Taylor's shine. A narrative so brutal yet so sticky that it began eroding the very foundation of his brand. Because Ryan's entire career thrived on the illusion that he was in on the joke. The one pulling the strings, the clever puppet master. But Taylor's expose ripped the mask away and showed him as desperate, reaching, insecure. And that image was kryptonite for a man whose persona thrived on invincibility cloaked in humor. And while his team tried to spin the story, planting little blurbs about Ryan being misunderstood or playfully supportive, the internet wasn't buying it. Because the memes were too strong, the receipts too clear, the timelines too damning, with fans resurfacing clips of award shows where Ryan accidentally cut into Taylor's spotlight or interviews where his quips seemed more pointed than playful. And the deeper people dug, the worse it looked, and soon, major outlets from Variety to Vanity Fair were publishing glossy features about the Reynolds effect, dissecting the ways men in Hollywood often attempt to center themselves even when the world is clearly orbiting a female star. And while Ryan's name carried the headlines, it was Taylor who emerged once again as the cultural queen, the one untouchable figure who could survive, and even thrive, while exposing someone else's games. And in that silence, in that grace, she won again, because she didn't need to speak further. Her truth had already been weaponized by her army of fans, by the media, by the very industry Ryan thought he could charm, and the collateral damage spread further than anyone imagined. Because suddenly, Blake Lively found herself in an impossible position. The perfect Hollywood wife now seen as the tether between two forces. Her best friend Taylor, who had just publicly shamed her husband, and Ryan, who was unraveling under the weight of the scandal. And whispers began circling about Blake's internal crisis. Whether she would protect her marriage image or safeguard her friendship with Taylor, and eagle-eyed fans dissected her every Instagram post, every public appearance, every fashion choice, as if searching for secret messages about where her loyalty lay. While insiders claimed Blake was furious at Ryan for dragging her into the circus. Because unlike Ryan, Blake had carefully preserved her reputation, staying away from overt controversy, building her brand as a trusted actress, entrepreneur, and friend. And now, thanks to Ryan's ego, she was painted into the corner of either standing by a man branded as insecure or risking her own marriage optics by siding with Taylor. And in Hollywood, optics are oxygen, so the tension only grew. And while Ryan tried to throw humor on the fire, tweeting jokes about sharing the spotlight, or laughing it off during interviews, the laughs fell flat, the audience's eyes narrowed, and the silence after the jokes was louder than the punchlines. Because when you're exposed, wit turns into weakness, sarcasm turns into self-defense. And even Ryan's most loyal fans began to admit that maybe Taylor had simply called out what everyone was secretly noticing for years. And what made it worse was that Taylor didn't just win the narrative. She owned it so completely that even other celebrities began echoing her sentiment, with Selena Gomez subtly liking posts shading Ryan, with late-night hosts weaving Taylor's confirmation into their monologues, with fashion editors labeling her the queen of narrative control, while Ryan tripped over his own attempts at redemption, and what had started as a spotlight tug-of-war now became a lesson in cultural dominance, because Taylor proved once again that no matter how powerful or popular a man in Hollywood thinks he is, when he tries to snatch her crown, he only exposes his own cracks. And in this case, Ryan Reynolds was left holding nothing but the shards of his carefully polished persona, his spotlight forever dimmed by the very star he tried to outshine. Thanks for watching. Subscribe my channel COREVANTA for more updates.